What is the ideal watch collection size? Is it one watch? Is it two watches? 3, 6, 12? Everyone has different opinions. Now, I have my opinion after several years of collecting watches. I wish it was one watch, but this box stands to reason to show that I need more than just one watch. So today what I'm going to talk about is what I think is the ideal watch collection size for me if I wasn't doing this whole YouTube thing. I'm cheating a little bit because I have more watches over here in a box, but those are watches I primarily almost never wear. They're mementos or watches that I'm making reviews on. They're not necessarily what I grab day to day. What I grab day to day are these 6 watches in this box. Now, I've covered a lot of these watches multiple times, so none of them will come as a shock to you. Now, as I open it up here, what I want to mention is I do consider all 6 of these to be keepers. It doesn't mean that I won't potentially sell 1 or 2 down the road at some point in time, but at the moment and for a while now, most of these have been here for a long period of time. The first one here was one of the first ones that I bought, the Rolex Explorer. This is something I wear really only on special occasions now. And I think the reason why originally when I started with a one watch collection and I bought this Explorer, I was basically telling myself that because I didn't want to spend any more money. And I think I learned a lot of things that I love about this watch. All these different polished edges and the small compact nature of it. The fact that these hands and these indices really glisten in the perfect lighting, or especially at slight angles. You just get this beautiful image, if I can show you here, of it reflecting it. Now, a lot of people want anti-reflective coating on their watches these days. I prefer not to have it just because, it's beautiful the way that the indices will shimmer just a little bit more than the glass itself or the sapphire glass itself. Most of these probably aren't running because I don't use watch winders, and that can be a whole other side conversation, but I find watch winders to be a convenience tool, but it will obviously wear your watch down over time faster than if you just let it sit in the box. Either way, I do wear this every so often. Beautiful, lovely watch. But then I decided I really need more than one watch. I need 2 watches. Now, the first time I got a second watch really was the Speedmaster. And having the Speedmaster with the Explorer here was a good combo. I think that they looked great together. I had a different version of the Speedy though. I had the 3861, the brand new one with the Hesalite crystal. Then I switched it for the Sapphire. Now I switched it for this vintage version. This is from 1969. This is an old version of the Speedy, and I love having a vintage Speedy. I want to do a follow-up video actually where I talk about this watch I traveled with for my wife is pregnant right now. We're excited and very happy about it. We took a trip to Europe as like a last hurrah, basically, before I know it's going to be much harder for us to travel or do a lot of different things. And I actually wore this the entire time, even though it was rainy 99% of the time because it was in the winter and we were in Amsterdam and Paris. And so it was pretty wet almost the whole time. And what I want to talk about is whether or not you should be worried with vintage watches and rain, but I'll do that in a separate video. Point is, 2 watches was great, but they're both black dials. And it was just, it was a lot of black every single day. And I thought I wanted something different. You see these videos, you watch videos hopefully like mine that inspire you to want to buy something else. I don't know if that's good or bad. You're welcome if you end up enjoying the watch. Point is, I decided I wanted something else. Now, I actually ended up selling the Hesalite in order to release enough funds for me to buy the Explorer 2. Loved the Explorer 2 and the Explorer pairing. I had basically these 2 watches as my 2 that I wore day in, day out for about a year. I've had this Explorer for reference for about 5 years now. I'm coming up on 6 in November. So I've had it for a long period of time. I got this in 22, so almost 3 years ago now. So time flies. The 2 are great watches, but I wanted something that had just a bit more uniqueness to it and a bit more wow in the dial itself. And that's when I ended up getting the 3rd one in this set, and that was this Grand Seiko. Now, the Grand Seiko, I think, is obviously talked about all the time these days. Now, this isn't one of their Evolution 9. If I could go back, I'd probably buy an Evolution 9 version of one of their watches, only because I think the finishing is absolutely excellent on the movement for the price point on their Evolution 9 series. And they got rid of this medallion thing that covers up the actual finishing that is on this watch. So I hate this medallion. If I could go back, and I've actually been tempted multiple times to buy either a spring drive or a high beat in their Evolution 9 series. It may be something that I do, but there are things that I love about this watch that I will not compromise on if I do buy another Grand Seiko to replace this, and that is the Gilt GS logo and the blue seconds hand. The textured dial is something you see all the time. I do also love the power reserve. So if I can get the Gilt GS logo, the blue seconds hand, and the power reserve on the dial in one of their Evolution 9 series with obviously the date and everything, then I would very, very much consider changing this one for an Evolution 9 variant. But for now, and I've considered also keeping this and then eventually buying the one from the Evolution 9 series. Either way, point is, I love Grand Seiko, great finishing, absolutely beautiful. I tend to underappreciate it when it sits in the box for a period of time, just because it isn't something that I grab as like an everyday sort of rugged wear. And that's what I do for a living. I have to wear something that's a little bit more rugged most of the time. And so as a result, I don't pick it up that often, but when I pick it up and I put it in light, it immediately looks fantastic. And it reminds me of how much I love the watch. But then for that period of time, I had kind of 3 watches, and I really then explored the 3-watch collection. If you watched the channel in the early days when I had terrible audio, not the best visuals, and poor lighting, you'll notice that my whole quest was around finding the perfect 3-watch collection. And that eventually is obviously not what I stuck with because, again, I have a problem. But the point is, now that I have 6 watches, what I found is that, when I wear, let's say I'll wear the Sub for a week, and then I'll say, hey, I love the Sub, but I want to wear the Explorer 2. I never find myself bored with what I have, which is a ridiculous thing to say when you're looking at these watches, even 1 or 2 of these. But I never find myself wanting to buy something else. I typically just want to wear something else, and then I grab something else in here. When I had 3, I changed them almost every day and even every other day. And what I found is that I started to look at buying something else. 4, I had a little less of that. At 6 here, I found it maximizes the box itself. So you don't have that empty slot in the box syndrome, which is always not fun, where you look at these 5 and you say, well, I really could get one more to fit that 6th spot. And so having this 6, having this watch box, this is a Taubery watch box. I don't know if you can see the logo here. I absolutely love this box. It's a small business, I think out of Australia, but it's a small business and I really want to support small businesses like mine. So I love them. I think this has been a great design. They didn't pay me anything. I actually purchased this box with my own money. I have a few others that later they sent me to feature in videos, but this one I bought on my own long before I ever even talked to the owner. As I had these 3, the 4th one I added was the Sub. I was offered a Sub at my ID. I thought I would take it and then I would consider selling it or doing something else. And then I eventually kept it. It's just one of those things that you end up changing your mind, whether that's good or bad. Certainly bad for my pocketbook, but I ended up buying that. And then last year, I also purchased the vintage version here, the Speedmaster. After I sold the last Speedy that I had, I really wanted another one, so I bought the Sapphire version. I had the Sapphire version for, I think, about a year. Really enjoyed it, wore it all the time, wore it in a trip to New York with my wife. Had a lot of fun with that watch, but it didn't scratch the itch of the vintage Speedy that I wanted since I was, really early in watch collecting. That was always the goal, was to have a vintage Speedy. And so then eventually I bought that. And for a while last year, these were the 3 pillars of what I wore day to day, either the Sub, the Explorer 2, or if I was willing to wear it because I wasn't going to do anything too crazy out in the shop, then I would wear the Speedy. Then I added this one for my birthday here late last year, which actually my birthday was early this year, but I just kind of early birthday present, cheated a little bit. But I got this, the IWC Mark 20, and I recommend it to just about everyone these days. If you're looking at buying a watch that's like an everyday watch that you're gonna wear, and maybe you don't want to have this crazy pit of money that you kind of store because it's not obviously the most responsible thing to do to spend this much money on watches. Point is, if you're looking at an everyday watch and you really only want to buy one, these 4 I think are great examples. If you get the modern version of the Speedy, is fantastic. And obviously the Explorer 2, I absolutely love. So really all 6 of these are everyday watches because that's sort of what I do. I don't dress up that often. I don't need to wear a gold watch. I don't need to have any other real function that isn't served within these 6. If I owned only one, I probably would want something else, but you can very easily get by with just either an IWC Mark 20 if you want an everyday wear that's a little larger. Obviously the Explorer here, I think, is more of a subdued sort of vintage proportion aesthetic that you're going to have in a modern package. If you want something that just wows you every time you put it on, the Grand Seiko is the everyday watch to buy. If you want what frankly is the standard choice, and I've talked about it a lot, the sub here is just really hard to not pick up in a pinch. Both the IWC and the sub tend to be when I have like a, hey, I need to wear a watch real quick, I grab one of these two and I put them on. I don't know why. I do love having a date, so the Submariner date is obviously popular for a reason. While I prefer the no date variant because of its classic nature and it harkens back to the original Submariner and its sort of unvarnished version, the Cyclops is also even more telling that you're wearing the most popular watch that is out there in the luxury market. Either way, point is, the sub with a date is still a good addition and probably the one most people should pick. So my recommendation overall is to kind of decide what you think is a good format. I would say 5, 6 watches is a great quantity to allow you to sort of dabble in different things. I would make sure you had a watch that was sort of an everyday that you could wear almost all the time, and probably 2 of those, just so that if you decide like, oh, well, I love the sub, but there's a new watch that just got released, maybe I want that instead, you could always bounce to something else for a few weeks, and then when you bounce back, you'll have appreciation for it again. So probably 2 everyday wears, in my opinion, the more the better, and then buy a watch box that fits the limit of your budget. So decide what you think your budget is, how much you want in each watch. I like to spread it out as much as possible, what budget I have. Over a long span of time, this has taken 6 years to get here. I typically buy one nice watch a year. Obviously, this year will not be that because our child is coming, and at that point in time, I will probably not want to spend any more money on another watch. But I've been proven wrong before, so we'll see. Maybe I grab an Evolution 9 and swap out the winter version of the Grand Seiko there. But I think 6 is a very much ideal size for a watch collection. I think it gives you a lot of versatility. I think if you were a more reasonable person, you might swap out something like maybe this Explorer with a dress watch to give yourself something that you could wear with a suit. My Explorer is what I typically will dress up with, or the Grand Seiko here. But something that isn't just either steel or titanium, so that you get a little bit more variety. I would expect most people to do that. I like black dials, I like blue dials, I like white dials or gray dials because they are versatile. And so I wear them more often. I find that like I have a Baltic stone dial that's green in there. I almost never wear it because it's so loud, it just doesn't fit with my life. I like more subdued clothes. I wear black and brown. This is my clothing. So having a really blue watch just doesn't fit that at the moment. But who knows, I might get crazy and start buying something that doesn't fit that aesthetic. Point is, 6 watches is great for me. That's what I like. That's what fits my collection. But what do you guys think? What is your ideal watch collection? Do you like 8, 10? Are you a Seiko person that you should go nuts? You got like 40 watches? Let me know in the comments below. Love to talk about it. It's always an interesting topic for me. Thanks. Take care.